be chicken.
That's great, yeah. You want it to express its chickenness.
Full expression of chicken.
Chickenness, if that's how you spell
It's a
that.
safe place to go. Shelter.
Needs shelter, okay, good.
Place with eggs.
Okay, laying box. Mhm. Good. So those are some of the things that chickens need. So this can give you an idea of, once you have the needs for the chickens, now let's think about what could possibly provide these needs. What other elements, so what else, what could provide shelter?
Is chicken one of those interconnected things, or is it a very independent thing? Chicken. I'm curious if it's a standalone, or does the chicken feel better if it contributes over all the other things? I mean, what's going on?
I think they definitely like to contribute. That's, I would say. We were making our herb garden. There was an existing garden on our property. There was a pretty small one that was very close to the house. So we decided to fill that up with all perennial herbs for our kitchen. It's kind of like our kitchen garden. It's just outside of the back door. And it was terribly overgrown with quackgrass. So we went in there this spring and we're shoveling it up by hand to take all the quackgrass roots out of it. And that was the first groundbreaking that we did on our farm in the spring. And our chickens, we had 4 chickens at the time, they were literally just right in there, like under the shovel. Like they just couldn't get close enough to the shovel, because as soon as we turned over the shovel, there were worms and there were roots and there were bugs and things like that. So as soon as we started doing it, they hadn't been scratching the ground before. From that day on, they like lived in the herb garden and were just scratching up holes, and it was like we reminded them how much fun it was to dig or something. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what I'm getting at is the needs, and then let's think about some of the products of chickens. What are some of the things that chickens make or do?
Eggs and
Eggs, manure,
Laughter.
laughter.
You make me laugh.
Definitely very entertaining. They scratch. They eat insects.
Oh, that's right.
Eat weeds.
Roosters what?
Crow at dawn.
They crow? Yeah.
Alarm clock? Crow all the time.
So what I'm trying to, so you would do this kind of an analysis for a lot of the main things that you're thinking of putting into your garden. So I'm thinking about a chicken, having chickens. I'm thinking about herbs. I'm thinking about having a pond. I'm thinking about having an orchard. And then how do the products of the chicken, how can that benefit the orchard, or how can the pond benefit the chicken? So seeing how these things work together and how they might be able to form some kind of a pattern, and then overlaying that pattern onto the existing site, the soils, the zones, the sectors that you've already built. That's kind of the basic part of the design process. Very, very in-depth, very thoughtful process, a lot of different things. But you also just have to get out on the site and spend time bonding with the site and seeing, what the site tells you.
So instead of going out and buying chicken feed, the food should be there already. You don't have to go out and buy feed. That's the idea, right? You want to minimize that extra stuff that you have to take off the site. You want to see if everything can be sustainable right there for the chicken and for
Yeah,
you.
as much as possible. That's kind of what when we grow, like our chickens now are on the garden where we grew oats and grew peas. So we planted those in the spring and let them grow up to the point where they were producing grain. But we don't have the equipment to harvest and process small grains. So rather than doing that, we put our chickens in there and let the chickens harvest it for us. And then we eat the chicken's eggs instead of eating the grain.
How long would they be on the grains for before like they run out?
We still feed them in addition to that,
Okay.
but it's
It minimizes
supplemental
the
feed, yeah.
They're also great for eating leftovers, like leftover food and scraps.
So do you understand, are you seeing how going through this process, this thought process and drawing these things out, you're also gonna, you're not gonna know all the answers to these things, so it's gonna require research, once you have your goals laid out, you see what your site has to offer, you see what you wanna do, then those create these beneficial processes that help us achieve our goals. Is that making sense?
What's the fourth one? And the elements of design.
Oh, the fourth one is Coevolution Management. Coevolution. And the example of this, or management and coevolution, I think, the example that I would give is guilds. So putting together a diverse assembly, when we were talking about guilds before, we're talking about different layers, is you want to minimize management. You want to make management as self-maintaining as possible. So you want to have all the actors in place, or you want to create that. So you don't want to have just apple trees or just fruit trees, because then you're going to have to bring in the mulch, and you're going to have to do the weeding. You're going to have to spray things to keep the pests away. But if you bring in all of the right actors into the site in the beginning, you're letting them do the work, you're letting nature do that. So if you have, I think I have a slide. So here's an example of the food forest. You've got a fruit tree, but you also have ground cover plants that prevent weeds from growing. So that minimizes your need to do weeding. And a lot of those ground cover plants you'd want to select for multifunctionality, so they would also fix nitrogen or accumulate nutrients from deep below that would then feed the tree for fertility. You'd want to have plants and flowers and things that were beneficial to insects, to predator insects, so that you then have healthy wasp populations that are going to come in and eat the insects, the boring beetles and the fruit-eating beetles and caterpillars and things that would otherwise become pests to your fruit tree. So we also want to have shrubs that provide habitat for birds and habitat for other beneficial insects. So we want to have those 7 layers of the canopy, the windbreak, the fruit tree, the shrub, the herb layer, the ground cover. And so try to put those things in place, but then you have to observe and accept feedback from your system. Like, I liked what you were saying about your garden, how some of the plants are taking over. So that's great feedback to be getting. It means that plant is really happy, the other plants around it aren't thriving as well. So you can think about, like, what are the conditions of that site that is making that plant thrive, and what can I do if I don't want it to go that direction? And like taking that plant out and putting it somewhere else is a great way that you're learning from your system and adapting it. But you're playing the role of like directing this ecosystem rather than having to do all of the like grunt work of maintaining it. That's the difference between management and coevolution and maintenance. So in permaculture, we try to set things up, do more work on the front end, so then over time, the amount of work that we have to put into the systems decreases.
I have a question. How do you find out all those
what to plant where, like which, the nitrogen-rich things, what eats bugs and what, you know, how do you figure those out? It's hard.
Yeah,
Go to garden
this,
center and say, here, do this.
this book, I think, for our climate, for our area, these two books, I can't say enough about them because they really are species specific about what does what. This book has, the last couple hundred pages is an index with tables like this that goes through and describes species by species, different plants that are useful in different ways. And this is, specifically about permaculture, so it has, it goes by category of what's a good windbreak, what's a good ground cover, what's a good nitrogen fixer. So resources like this are super helpful.
What's the name of the other one?
What's the second?
Second grade,
This one,
yeah.
The Holistic Orchard by Michael Phillips. And I wanted to write down a couple other good permaculture books. One is called The Earth User's Manual. Or no, The Earth User's Guide to Permaculture. That's by Rosemary Morrow. And then the other one is Gaia's Garden. That's by Toby Hemingway. Those are really good. This is the Bible of permaculture. This is the Permaculture Designer's Manual. This is the textbook for the 2-week intensive course. And we go through all the different chapters talking about different things. But these two books are paperbacks, and they're even smaller than this, and they have a lot of illustrations, and they go over a lot more examples. So they're less theoretical, a lot easier to wrap your head around, and fewer than 700 pages like this one.
You have two of the edible forest, what is the difference?
It's a 2-volume series. This one is the theory, and this is the practice of it.
But it's for temperate climate.
Right, specific for temperates. And this is this is put out by Seed Savers Exchange, which is in Iowa, but it's an inventory of all the different, where you can get different types of fruits, berries, and nut trees across the country. So you can either look up by location or look up by type of.
John, would you repeat the name of that book?
It's called the Fruit, Berry, and Nut Inventory. So it has hundreds of nurseries listed all across the country that have different fruits, and it has, like, if you go under, every type of fruit, it has it listed out by all the different varieties of that fruit too, so you can look up the qualities of the different varieties and see which ones you want.
Is it temperature soil types?
It does make recommendations for different varieties, what soils they grow well in. So. How are we doing on time?
It is 3:12.
3:12, okay.
I think we were going to have them do something outside if there's time.
Yeah, I think if we want to go outside, we can walk over. One of the houses over this way, there are a couple of apple trees that were recently planted, and they're just kind of standing out in the open. And so I'd like to go out there, and we have some shrubs and some ground covers and some different plants that I'd like to lay out and put out on the ground how we would plant them as a guild to support those fruit trees, so you can get a better visualization of what this would look like.
So everybody know the Y junction as you're driving in to the ashram, right? We can meet there. It's just very close to that.